So a study finds video games with sexualized content do not cause misogynistic attitudes or body image issues.
Oh no,
Oh my
Anita
God, you're telling
Sarkeesian was
me
wrong?
you're telling me that women aren't threatened by this body? So according to the results of a recent study, psychologists have found that the evidence is weak that sexualized games influence player attitudes and behavior. Set to have its results published in the October 2022 edition of the journal Computers and Human Behavior under the title Does Sexualization in Video Games Cause Harm in Players? A Meta-Analytic Examination. The recent study sought to address the oft-touted claims of the perpetually offended, such as disgraced critic Anita Sarkeesian and numerous gaming journalists. It answers the question of whether video games with sexualized content do or do not relate to mental health and body image problems in players and / or sexualization and hostility towards women. Damn, you're like fucking 10 years too late on this study for it to have done us any good. Conducted by Christopher J. Ferguson, perhaps best known for his work debunking the similar claims that violent video games inspire violent behavior.
This guy's doing work.
Yeah, James D. Sauer, Aaron Drummond,
disciples,
Julia Neer, and Emily Lowe Calverlabe, great name. The study explored the degree to which sexualization in games was related to both well-being / body dissatisfaction and sexism / misogyny among players in two separate meta-analyses.
What about the rise in feminism? Let's look at that.
In doing so, the team reportedly found that sexualization in games was neither related to well-being / body dissatisfaction nor sexism / misogyny. What do you know? Better designed studies and those that showed less evidence for research or expectancy effects for sexism / misogyny outcomes tended to find less evidence for effects. Wow, what a statement. They explained.
The people that weren't looking for it didn't find it.
Quote, as appears commonly in other realms of media effects, the evidence is weak that sexualized games influence player attitudes and behavior. Psychology-centric news outlet SciPost explains that these conclusions were derived from a meta-analysis of 18 other studies, all measuring the results of exposing a subject to video games both featuring and lacking sexualized content. 15 of these measured aggression towards women along with sexist attitudes, while 10 measured factors involved with depression, body image, or
Did
anxiety.
They interview someone being like, so do you want to
so when you play this game,
tonight?
does it make you want to be mean to this lunch lady?
Oh hell yeah, I want to beat the hell of her. Yeah.
Speaking to SciPost, Ferguson
what was the game though? Red Dead Redemption though. You could
where
string
you could
up
beat up
like
the suffrages?
the suffrages.
Yeah. Speaking to SciPost, Ferguson prefaced, quote, I've been studying the effects of video games on players for 2 decades now, most of it on violence. I think most people have come to accept that there's no relationship between violent video games and aggression or violent crime, despite some holdouts, including the American Psychological Association. However, wow, that's a game. However,
ride that horse.
People still ask a lot of questions about sexualization and whether games either make male players more sexist towards women or whether women players experience more body dissatisfaction and other well-being concerns.
What about male players getting body dissatisfaction?
You know, I saw a meme today where it had that, you know, like the Wojak of the girl, right? And it's like a sexy woman. It's like, no, this is so damaging. Women don't look like this. And then it has a picture of like fucking Conan the Barbarian, and it has the Chad meme guy, and he's like, well, time to hit the gym. So as alluded by Ferguson, wait, hold on. It's a much smaller research field than the violence field, so we hope to bring some clarity to it. As alluded to by Ferguson, the theory that video games cause real-life violence has been debunked in 3 studies from 2020, one being a self-declared definitive study from Oxford University, along with studies from 2019, 2017, 2 from 2016, 2015, and 2008. Overall, the moral panic over video games and sexualization is pretty much following the paint-by-numbers pattern of the video game violence debate. He continued, lots of hyperbole and moral outrage, but very little evidence that video games are causing any harm to either male or female players. It's a purely public health issue. This doesn't appear to be much of a concern at all. I'm sorry, as a purely public health issue, this doesn't appear to be much of a concern at all, Ferguson condemned. Quote, that doesn't mean people can't advocate for better representations of females in games. They just need to be cautious not to make claims of harm that can be easily debunked, thereby calling into question what might otherwise be reasonable advocacy goals. I just love the idea that in the near future, the pendulum is going to finally swing the other way, and games are just going to get so fucking raunchy.
They'll all be the last.
It's going to get uncomfortably raunchy. So sexual it becomes hostile. I need to incorporate that into our clips. No, so sexy it becomes hostile. Speaking to the players the team analyzed, Ferguson said of their quality, quote, the major caveat is simply that many of the studies just weren't very good. The good news is that the higher quality studies were less likely to find evidence for negative effects than lower quality studies. Right. That's what made them the higher quality studies. In some cases, wow, one of those boobs is really droopy. In some cases, scholars probably interjected their personal moral opinions into the studies, if unintentionally, he proposed. Granted, it's still a fairly small research area, but this initial data has been so underwhelming that I'm not sure there's much to be mined here. Quote, obviously, we go through these cycles of blaming media for social problems, Ferguson reminded. At least with fictional media, the evidence often reveals that we're probably scapegoating media and fiction rarely. We're probably scapegoating media, and fiction rarely causes social problems. Again, to be fair, advocating for better representation of females in games can be a worthy cause, even if the games don't cause harmful effects, he concluded. He covered his ass, right? I support those efforts, just hope advocates don't misrepresent the evidence as a part of their efforts, which unfortunately is all too common among advocacy groups. You're basically telling Anita Sarkeesian to abuse your findings. Despite these findings and the overall results being an already common point of understanding among players, the truth is already self-evident. These outcry cycles over sexism in video games have resulted in numerous instances of censorship. For example, in October 2018, a developer working for Japanese studio Light claimed Sony Interactive Entertainment was demanding them and other Japanese studios to censor sexual content in their games. During a PlayStation event that December, Sony Interactive Japan Asia president Atsushi Morita was asked about how the alleged policy would balance with freedom of expression, to which he explained about the censorship, we tried to meet global standards. That's your mistake. Regarding the balance of the freedom of expression and safety for children, it's a tough problem to deal with, he admitted in follow-up. A Sony spokeswoman confirmed the existence of this policy in 2019, justifying its existence by citing the rise of not just the Me Too movement, but also the increasing popularity of video game streaming on YouTube and Twitch. Well, you know what? We just got to start that stream on Pornhub. This censorship was even afflicted upon games explicitly designed to be fan service heavy, so much so that it led Senran Kagura producer Kenichi Takai to leave Marvelous later that same year. Damn. However, it's not just Sony who have taken a stance against sexual content in video games, especially when they feature an anime art style. Series such as Mortal Kombat and Tomb Raider notably desexualized their characters in recent entries, while Capcom censored R. Mika's butt-slapping taunt in Street Fighter V. Did they really? How dare you?
Didn't
Wow.
we cover that?
No, I don't think we did. The butt slapping of R. Mika? I don't think so.
Hey, come on!
That is not Street Fighter V. But yes, we did cover that. So Evo Japan 2019 saw organizers cut the live stream of a demonstration of Dead or Alive 6 when director Yohei Shimbori demonstrated the game's photo mode in a lewd manner, while two real-life models demonstrating the game's jiggle physics in real life.
Fucking Chad dude for that one.
Commentator started. How did I not hear about that?
Well, I think we know what game we'll have to play on stream sometime.
Commentators stated upon returning that the footage, quote, does not reflect the content or intention of Evo. And that's why you fail. Tifa Lockhart notably had a sports bra under her iconic tank top in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Director Tetsuya Nomura later confessed that Tifa's bust size was limited due to a mandate from Square Enix ethics department. I mean, do you really want her free balling those titties underneath there with the pokies sticking out? That'd be so goddamn distracting and immersion breaking. The list of
Depends on what kind of immersion you want.
the list of redesigns. I mean, if every time she comes on screen to talk to Cloud, porno music starts playing.
It's just the sax solo from Careless Whisper.
Sexy Sax Man. Have you seen that YouTube video? Sexy Sax Man Sergio Flores. You know what I'm talking about?
Like,
yeah, this guy made a persona called Sergio Flores, and he literally just plays the George Michael song "Careless Whisper" on saxophone, and he like goes into public places and just goes, right? And he's like shirtless, and he's got like a fake mullet and a mustache. Like, you haven't seen that? I gotta send that to you. So the list of redesigns and censorship of this could be the weirdest doc, but it's like, oh yeah, study finds video games with sexual content, subtopic, sexy sax fan. The list of redesigns and censorship of sexual content in video games over the last 5 years or so, not including allegations of Western studios intentionally designing female characters to be unattractive or localized or censoring scenes of that could even potentially offend women. I think censoring scenes that could even potentially offend women or so is almost endless. Most recently, the VR release of Resident Evil 4 received numerous cuts to its script in order to, as explained by Facebook spokesperson, update the game for modern audiences. However, an insider who leaked those edits ahead of the game's release claimed it was done out of fear of that the content's inclusion would result in social media backlash. In fact, it may be this fear of being branded sexist by the outrage mob that has led these companies, all of whom have cited a 2015 study that said video games don't make people sexist, or simply ignored the offended's demands. Hold on. Okay. She said, in fact, it may be this fear of being branded sexist by the outrage mob that has led these companies, all of whom could have cited a 2015 study that said video games don't make people sexist, or simply ignored the offended's demands to instead choose to kowtow to the first, to instead choose, they structured that sentence poorly, at the first signs of trouble. However, there are those pushing back. Platinum Games has kept Bayonetta shamelessly sexy, as intended by her female designer, Mari Shimazaki. By ignoring accusations of sexism and sticking to the intended vision of the series director Hideki Kamiya, the studio was able to produce 2 quality titles that have been well received by both fans and critics. Top Hat Studios also caught flack for one of the things that they did with the new Bayonetta is that they have a streamer mode so that all the sexy stuff is toned down so that it's compliant for streaming things. So that if you're playing on Twitch, or if you're playing in the living room and, little brother's coming by, right? We talked about this before about like, I proposed the concept, right?
Cyberpunk 2077 does it too.
Yeah.
Does that too.
Yeah. So Top Hat Studios also caught flack for Sense a Cyberpunk Ghost Story, a game set in the future where body modification and as such hypersexualized appearances have become the norm. I mean, there you are. However, in response, the developer stated they would, quote, categorically and absolutely refuse to censor the game, even going so far as to share a number of abusive messages and gaslighting attempts leveled against them by industry-adjacent people.
Good on them.
Right. Amid rumors of that Tales of Arise would be censored on PlayStation, Bandai Namco was compelled to state the game wouldn't be censored on any platform. Wow, that whole second half of this article was just a recap of everything we've covered in the last 3 years. Anyway, so water is wet, I think is a good explanation. We all knew this.
Yep.
Glad we read the whole thing.